Hello, my name is Marie Sanchez, and I will be presenting my PowerPoint presentation on conflict and peacemaking. Now, we have all been through some type of conflict in our past and tried to resolve it peacefully. But we all know that sometimes it necessarily doesn't end that way. During the presentation, I will be explaining what is conflict, what is peacemaking, find the causes of conflict, and how to resolve conflict with peacemaking. So, what are we waiting for? And let's get started. What is the definition of conflict? The definition of conflict, according to Myers, is a perceived incompatibility of actions or goals. I believe that Myers is explaining that when it comes to conflict, it suggests that people are involved and are totally dedicated to the situation at hand. If conflict never existed, neither would we know what good is all about. You can't have one without the other. Who can be affected by conflict? Well, you have to remember that numerous of people are affected by it in many different ways. Your friends and family, coworkers, spouses, religious factors, and countries. When conflict strikes, and depending on the situation, it can hit home for many people. Conflict just doesn't affect one person in the circle. It affects all people in and around the circle. Why is understanding conflict so important? It's important because there are many beneficial factors to help us understand it so that later on we can resolve it. The first one is having great communication skills. Second, understanding situations and why they clash. Third, to help find a solution to the problem. And lastly, engage to find a common ground. We need to understand this in order for us to find the proper solution to the problem. Let's talk about what are the causes of conflict. There are many things that can cause conflict, but these are the ones that stuck out to me. You have social dilemmas. For example, Myers said global warming, weapon control, and public goods servicing within different parties are part of social dilemmas. These social dilemmas are what we face every day in the world. They will forever be here until we find some type of solution to these problems. Another cause of conflict is competition. This is either with one-on-one individuals and or between groups of individuals. Then you have lack of communication and when tragedy strikes. An example I would like to use is about the tragedy that happened at an Orlando gay club on June 12th. These people were targeted because of their sexual orientation. The suspect opposed of the LGBT community and decided to take matters in his own hands and gunned down 49 people where he ended up being gunned down by police. Someone will always have a problem with a certain religion, sexual orientation of an individual, a woman breastfeeding in public, or other things that may rub him or her the wrong way. This conflict that our country faces will continue to happen if we can't find some type of peace between all humans. On the previous slide, I had mentioned competition as one of the causes of conflict. Let's take a closer look at how competition creates conflict. When you have any type of competition, you are bound to have some downfalls along the way. With those downfalls within the competition come disagreements, which can lead to tension between individuals. You can get malicious behavior coming from the individuals, which can turn into negative feelings, verbal abuse, and physical abuse. At times, people will think that this type of behavior will solve the issue when all it does is make matters worse. Conflict that happens between groups can linger into a deeper understanding within the group, hoping to change the directions of a group's goal to a positive goal, and hope to bring better group judgments. The picture that you see is from Muzaffar Sharif's famous experiment called the Robber's Cave. The eagles are representing their group by letting the rattlers know that they are not backing down against them. This displays a great example of competition between the two groups. In the real world, I see that people will sacrifice their own self-interest in order for them to help out their group at the expense of other groups. Let's take a look on how the mirror image perception and social traps engage conflict. They look out for their own well-being. They treat themselves as ethical and loving individuals who can do no wrong. They treat the opposing individual as evil and vicious, and the opposing individual tends to view us as we view them. In my opinion, I think we all have done that and will continue to do that in the future. Let's see how resolving conflict of social dilemmas will help solve the problem. For one, having smaller groups of individuals. This will make each individual feel equal to one another, and it would make them have more responsibility. Second, communication is key. You have to know how to talk to each other in order for everyone to reach the goals that they are striving for. If you don't have that communication, then how are you supposed to come out with a solution to the problem at hand? And lastly, you have to have regulations and laws. These laws are put into place so that we don't have any type of conflict. But there will always be someone out there who won't follow the regulations and the rules. Now that I've gone over conflict and explained about it with lots of details, I would like to start talking about peacemaking. What is the definition of peace and the definition of peacemaking? Myers defined peace as the outcome of creatively managed conflict. Wagner defined peacemaking as an attempt to find a solution on disruptive conflict through bargaining, mediation, and agreeing on things. Now that we got the definitions down, let's go ahead and talk about what are the outcomes of peacemaking. The outcomes you can get with peacemaking are low levels of violence, healthy relationships, happiness, and treaties among countries. If peacemaking came easy to everyone, then our society would be so much more peaceful to live in. We wouldn't have this fear that we have today. How can peacemaking resolve conflict? Here are a few factors that we should remember when trying to resolve any type of conflicts. You should make contact with the individual or individuals. Contacting them first shows that you mean business and want to resolve the issue. Communication. Communicate with each other and not just stay silent. Take a stand and say what is on your mind. Nothing will get done if no one communicates with each other. An example of communication is building cohesiveness, bargaining, and mediation. These are great ways to try to get the issues resolved. Peacemaking is referred to the renewal of peaceful that is associated with the termination of conflict, which has received notice by researchers. I like to think of peacemaking as starting over. All the problems have been resolved, and both parties can now start fresh with a blank slate. Now that I have talked about a few factors on how peacemaking can resolve conflict, let's go more into depth with them. What can contact offer in peacemaking? It enables the individuals or groups to interact with each other. They're able to come together as a whole to engage in the situation. This gives the individuals or groups time to settle the score between them before matters get worse. Their behavior will change and attitudes will be followed between the individuals. Peacemaking is something we all should remember to do in order for us to move on. If we don't resolve the problem, we will never be able to move forward like we want to, and the problem will just be lingering in the back of our minds. What can communication offer in peacemaking? You've been hearing that word a lot in this presentation because without communication, you have nothing to work with. Let's take a look at the factor below. The first one is bargaining. Bargaining with anyone can be tough. You have to meet in the middle in order for both sides to come out happy. With bargaining comes tough bargaining, which can sometimes backfire on you. You have to learn to compromise and you have to set a goal. Another form of communication is having a mediation between both parties. This will allow both parties to come together in a meeting to settle their conflict. Get a third party involved to help with mediating the meeting. Sometimes it's good to have a third person involved to help facilitate things. With mediation, it can bring success for both parties. And with mediation, it replaces the win-lose between both parties with a win-win for all. Both parties will end up leaving happy. If bargaining and compromising by both parties alone doesn't work out, then choose mediation. Having a mediation will get the job done for you. Let's go ahead and talk about how building cohesiveness can help with peacemaking. Number 1, you end up coming together in a time of need. This can either be because of a threatening or dangerous situation. 2, you end up overcoming barriers that was once there. You realize to put all differences aside to help each other out. And last, you end up building a bonding experience. A bonding experience that can end up lasting a lifetime. It becomes more of a we feeling versus a me feeling. I would like to use the Orlando shootings again as an example. When this horrible tragedy occurred, everyone across the nation came together as a whole to give their prayers, support, donations, and love to the victims who lost their lives, to their families, and to the entire Orlando community. Buildings across the nation were lit up in the colors to support the LGBT community. This just shows you that there is still hope for our nation, and people around the world will stand behind us. Why is peacemaking important on resolving conflict? It's important because you will earn and deserve respect. You learn to forgive each other. Each person will get heard, and it encourages individuals to develop a resolution to the problem. We should try and remember that having peace is also about living in a society where our children will grow up in and will learn to accept one another and accept people for who they are, regardless of who or what they are. We need more love in this world and less violence. We should be celebrating life and not judging each other. We are all human and we all shed the same amount of blood and tears. In summing up my presentation, the key points I focused on was how conflict affects people, the importance of conflict, how to resolve conflict, the outcomes of what peacemaking can achieve, and the different ways that peacemaking can help resolve conflict. I hope the examples that I explained throughout my presentation were helpful enough to understand and to put things into perspective. We will always have conflict regardless, but we need to strive for making peace with each other and to let go of the small stuff. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.